Hi, hi. Welcome to Simple Soap Making, Simple Soap Making Workshop. Just give me a few seconds here. I am new to this whole Zoom thing, so I'm gonna get everything set up and then we are gonna get going. Let's see. Okay, I think I got it. Thank you for joining me live. If you are catching the replay on this, welcome. I'm Shelly. We're going to get started here. I'm Shelly. I'll be your instructor for the day. Today, we're going to be talking about cold process soap making. I'm going to give you step-by-step instructions. Then we're going to go ahead and make some soaps. You all received a link with all the information of things that you need to print. So you should have received soap making for beginners with 3 basic soap making recipes. We're going to be making the lard soap today. You will have received a cold process soap making guide. Today, we're going to be talking about the room temperature method. And so that's my go-to method. There's a few others, but today we're going to be talking about that one. And then you will see a link to another a PowerPoint that we're going to be doing today. There is where I'm going to be teaching you all about soap making. So we're going to go over the basics at the beginning, and then we're going to dive in and do some like applicable instruction while we make soap today. And so I am going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to get the PowerPoint up. We're going to talk. You won't be able to see me, but you'll be able to hear me. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Go ahead and put question, and then I will try to look down there as we go to answer any questions that you might have. So let's see if I can share this. Okay, I think I got it. Okay, can you let me know if you can see the PowerPoint? I think you can. I believe you can see me up in the corner. Can you let me know if you can see me? I believe you can. Whoops. Oh, yes, PowerPoint. I can't see you. Okay. Okay, so I can just see myself. I apologize. I am like technology. Technology has not been loving me this week, I have to admit. Okay, so today we're going to talk about simple soap making for beginners. It is just that. It doesn't need to be complicated. I am on a mission to teach people that we gotta simplify and kind of get back to the basics. So I'm Shelly. Hey, I'm Shelly. If we haven't met, I'll be your instructor today. I love all things gardening, making. My passion for being creative started when I was young. My mom's an artist. I went to art school at St. Cloud State here in Minnesota. And then I eventually transitioned to being an American Sign Language interpreter. So I currently do that. Um, you, I guess I couldn't stay away from using my hands. So here I am. Currently by day, I am a sign language interpreter. My husband and I have our business, Little House on the Homestead, and we are just happiest. We are just our happiest at our farm and growing healthy things for our family. This is my flock. On the left, you'll see my daughter Oakley, myself, Shelly, my husband Stephen, and my son Sawyer. I want you to pay close attention to my son because our journey started with his problematic skin issues in 2015. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory because I believe it's important. And so here we go. Our beginner, our beginning. I'm a homesteader, soap maker. I wear many hats, but when my son Sawyer was born in 2015 with problematic skin issues, I and my husband and I just knew we needed to adopt a more natural lifestyle for our family. So we started making all the natural products. We grew the garden to harvest the herbs and botanicals to enrich our products, just like my grandmother did all those years ago. I quickly knew that I could help other families and people just like ours. And with a prompting from the good Lord, we created Little House on the Homestead. Here, we craft handmade artisan products for our families without all the toxins and teach folks just like you how to get back to the basics with simple things and skills like soap making. So whether you just want to stock your home or maybe you just want to make for fun with a girlfriend, I hope that you enjoy this workshop. So to begin this workshop, and I begin every workshop with saying safety here is our number one priority. Both our in-person events and our virtual events, I cannot stress enough the importance of having safety when soap making. If you learn nothing else from this workshop, I want you to remember one thing. Soap making is a caustic process. You can severely injure yourself if you're not careful. You absolutely need protective gear, gloves, long sleeve shirts, closed-toed shoes, and eye protection every single time you make soap. The picture that you'll see are spill-proof goggles. They're what I recommend while we are making soap today, and I will show you what we have and some of the things that you should be getting, when you're about ready to make your own soap. Here you'll see the right and the wrong pairs of eye equipment. Not every eye protection is going to work for this application. Like I said, it's a caustic process. And so if that somehow splatters in your eye or something happens, it's going to be detrimental. And so at the picture on the left, these are chemical spill-proof goggles. This is what you need to keep yourself safe from spills and splatters while you are soap making. The picture on the right, reading glasses, any sort of like glasses that do not hug your face are not an acceptable safety measure when you make soap. These are not spill proof. They are not going to protect your eyes if something were to happen. And so I cannot stress it enough that I just really want you guys to be safe. You will see that is a theme that we are going to stick with in this workshop. Also, my disclaimer, this is not a hobby for children. Because of the process, it is not recommended for anyone under 16 or 17 years of old anyone under 16 or 17 to take part in soap making. I don't let my kids soap make with me, just as you should not. This is not a pet-friendly activity. If your pets ingest sodium hydroxide or lye, they will get very sick. It is not to be ingested by both humans and pets. And so for the sake of safety, go ahead and put the pets away while you're soap making, just to make sure that they don't accidentally get any any part of the soap making ingredients. I would just hate for them to pass away because we weren't safe. And so this is not a pet friendly activity. You absolutely need safety equipment for yourself to be safe. No questions asked. This is a non-negotiable in all of my workshops. It can cause permanent injury if you do not keep yourself safe. And so these are just some things and guidelines that we have to follow to make sure that you are making soap appropriately. Some very important things when we are going into the process of soap making. Sodium hydroxide, the top left box, mixing lye. When you're mixing lye and liquid, we do not mix liquid into lye. Doing that, you always want to mix lye into liquid. Doing so will cause a very harsh chemical reaction, both dramatic temperature increase and toxic fumes that should not be inhaled. And so if some of this is going over your head right now, fear not. I'm going to show you this real life application. But first we just want to talk about the basics. And so always lye into liquid, never the other way around. Materials. The materials that you use for soap making should not be used for anything else other than soap making. Once they are designated for the craft, once you start making soap, you should only use them for that purpose. So you would not take your immersion blender, make soap, and then go and make a really fun tomato bisque. Like, you wouldn't do that. There will still be lye residue and things on your stick blender. And so you just want to designate special tools for the job. Thirdly, calculator there on the bottom right. You always want to run your recipe through a lye calculator. And you might be like, Shelly, what in the world is a lye calculator? So in soap making, their oils and liquid need to be at appropriate ratios to actually saponify or to mix together to make soap. So this calculator will tell you everything from how much lye to use, how much liquid to use, how much oil of the carrier oils that you also need to use. So only a specific amount will turn your liquid and your oils into soap. There absolutely is no guessing. Appropriate measurements of all of your ingredients is very, very important in soap making. Continued on this page are some other things that I find are very important to note. If in the event of a lye and liquid spill, go ahead and grab some paper towels or grab some bath towels and immediately clean up the spill. Put those items in the tub, dilute them in water, or simply use paper towels to absorb the lye and liquid spill. If the spill is great enough, let's say you're making a big batch soap, which you shouldn't be if you're a beginner, but if you are, and if it's big enough of a spill, basic clay cat litter will do the job, absorb any of the chemical spill, and then you're able to dispose of it easily. Curing. After we go ahead and make our soaps, we've mixed up all of our ingredients, and we're on to the point where we've poured our soap. It's went through the stage of saponification where it gets Right? Saponification is oil and liquid mixing together to make a solid state. So once it's done that and you've taken it out of the mold, you're always going to need to cure your soaps for a minimum of anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the kind of soap that you are making. Using an uncured bar of soap straight away out of the mold will not be enjoyable. There is still active lye particles inside the soap, and so it needs to go through that full process of becoming a solid state before you're able to use it. So giving your soap that appropriate amount of time to saponify, converting an oil and a fat plus a liquid into soap takes time. And so once you cut your soap, the liquid will begin to evaporate and it will give you a really fun, long lasting, hard bar of soap. So it's very, very important that you don't use your soap straight out of the mold straight away. Not enjoyable. It is a bad habit to get into. It's unlike cold processed soap is unlike soap. Maybe you've heard of melt and pour soap that you can use straight away because it's already been through the process and all you're doing is heating it down, melting it down, and then putting it into a fun mold. So the process is very different. To keep yourself safe, please make sure that your soaps are cured. Lastly, measurements. When in soap making, like I said, it's a really specific process. Each recipe has things such as the water content in your soap, how much oil you will use, what is your fragrance, how much fragrance you will use. Because of all of those minute details, it is absolutely imperative that you run your recipe through a lye calculator. This calculator, which you'll be getting the link for just a bit later, will tell you things like how much lye do you need to use? How much liquid do you need to use to mix your lye? How much of each oil do you need to use from the chosen oils in the recipe? Only, again, only a specific amount will turn that liquid and oil into soap. So there is no guessing. In soap making, we will absolutely need to run it through a calculator. I'm going to just stop for just a moment before we get on to the history of soap making because I think it's absolutely fun. Do you have any specific questions for me before we continue? If I can find it. Okay, seeing none, we are going to move on to the history of soap making. I always think it is so fun just to get an idea of where it all started. Like, how did our ancestors begin to make soap for themselves and their families? Whoops, I'm sorry. Soap making started back in 2800 BC, started with the Babylonians. They marked the first ones in history to kind of master the craft of soap making during that time. They boiled wood ash down to make, homemade lye and the first soap-like material. I often hear stories from my family of my grandmother doing this very same thing, making her own sodium hydroxide, also known as lye. And so to know that even back then, with my sweet grandmother doing it, they were doing it years and years prior. Um, and it's just, and the art of soap making has kind of evolved over the course of the years. So it is fun to see the history. I don't know if you are a history junkie like me, but I really like to know how things got their start and their beginning. At that time, during that time of old, people didn't actually use soap for hygiene. In fact, they used it for like cleaning their utensils and things like clothing and textiles, and maybe to spot treat areas on their body of infection, but they weren't actually using it to cleanse their body. Instead, they would use things like clay and stone and ash, and things like sticks to get the grime off their body to cleanse themselves. So I thought that was really interesting because even though they used and they made sodium hydroxide and mixed it with fats and oils that they had available to them, they actually did not use it to cleanse their skin. And it wasn't until a bit later that they realized that it was something that could be used to cleanse them. Back then, there were no artificial dyes, scents alike, and they used things like oils from their animals, just like soap makers do today, to kind of get back to the basics and use those old timey traditions to, as a more natural approach to skincare. Things like lard and tallow, using fats from like buffalo and deer, and all of those things were used back then. Vegetable oils were readily available. They were super cost effective to manufacture back in the day. And, as a person that's new to the craft, I really want you to think of those things when you create too. It absolutely doesn't have to be the most expensive thing in the world. There are fats and oils that are readily available to you. And yeah, I'm going to show you just how to use those kind of things. So now you know about the history of soap making, and some little tidbits of what it is we're going to be doing today. Here are some of the things that you will need in this new journey. You're going to need eye protection, any sort of chemical spill-proof eye protection. You're going to need nitrile gloves or some sort of a rubber glove that is able to withstand the heat of the soap batter if you get it onto your gloves. You need a long sleeve shirt. Heat safe mixing bowls. Yes, they are different. And so not just any bowl will work. You are going to need a silicone spatula. You're going to need your sodium hydroxide or your lye, a blender, an immersion blender. Without an immersion blender, it would take you quite a long time to, get your soap to what is called trace. So when it thickens enough to pour it into the mold, it would take a very long time. So I highly suggest getting an immersion blender. You're going to need distilled water, something that is free of contaminants. So always use distilled water. Tap water will not work. Lots of things might go wrong with your soap batch. So go ahead and err on the side of caution. Get yourself some distilled water. If you've been here long enough, you know that I am an absolute supporter of natural colorants and oils. As you heard in the beginning, my son's journey with this started with problematic skin issues and all the things that that commercial manufacturers put in their products unnecessarily. So today, I will not be talking about fragrance oils to use. I will not be talking about all the glitters and the micas and all the fake colorants that you see probably floating around Instagram or Facebook or wherever. I won't be talking about those today. This is a natural soap class, and so we're going to be using just that, natural colorants, today. We'll also be talking about the different kinds of molds. So you will need that in your soap making journey. You're going to need a soap mold, whether that be a silicone mold or a wood mold. I'll show you the difference of each of these as we get started. You're going to need oils and fats like sunflower oil and coconut oil, or the oils that we are going to be using today on page 3 of our soap making for beginners, the 1 pound recipe. So we're going to be using olive oil and coconut oil and farm rendered lard, and castor oil. So we are going to be using those carrier oils today. You'll also need a digital scale. This is very important. You have to measure your oils out by weight. So we're going to be measuring them in ounces. You can also measure them in grams alike, but I always stick to ounces. That's just what works for me, but you'll have to decide what works for you. As you'll see at the bottom, there's a little disclaimer that says metal and other sorts of stainless steel will react with your lye in your soap batter. So when in doubt, please use a silicone spatula. I know it seems that there are like really specific rules, and truth be told, there are. So anything other than stainless steel will react in your lye batter. So when in doubt, if you're not quite sure if it's stainless steel, just go ahead and use a silicone spatula. As you'll see, here are the 2 different types of soap molds on the market today. In the back picture, you'll see a wood slab mold. It's lined with thick freezer paper, which is absolutely fine in soap making. That's exactly how I started. My husband, made me some wood molds when I first started, and that's absolutely fine, but you do need to line them, to make them reusable to get your soap out of the mold. The bottom picture, you'll see the 6 cavity soap mold. This is a silicone mold. I absolutely recommend these silicone molds. They're easy. You don't have to line them. They pop right out of the mold when they're done saponifying and when they're turned into a solid state. If I had to recommend any, this would be the mold, this silicone version of a mold that I would recommend. Starting out, I just recommend them because they're so simple to use. You can use them time and time again, and you can throw them right in the dishwasher. So they're really user friendly. The containers that we will be using today, there are specific containers, and I spoke about that a little bit in the beginning. But when you are making soap, not all containers are created equal. Plastic containers for mixing must have a little recycle number on the bottom of the container, like that is PPE 5 or PP. I'm sorry, 6. PP7 on the bottom to ensure that they are heat safe and rated for mixing lye and liquid. You are going to want to use then HDPE number 2, so another recycle number on the bottom of your pail or pot or what have you for mixing your oils and your sodium hydroxide together. So anything like a 2.5 gallon pail to a 5 gallon pail, or if you're making small batch products, the container on the right side of the picture is a painter's container. You can get them at any local home and hardware store, and they're really amazing and safe for soap making. And so don't go out and buy the most expensive things like great value yogurt containers, Chobani, whatever. They all are really great. You can reuse them, and I just hate like throwing them. And so, being able to reuse them before they hit the landfill is really important to me. And so things like this will be beneficial, save you tons of money when you are starting your soap making journey. And so when in doubt, reuse, but just go ahead and be safe and check the recycle number on the bottom of your container. We won't get into it a lot today as it's an advanced technique, but there are alternative liquids that you can use in soap making. Today, we're going to be using distilled water as our liquid, but there are also things such as goat milk. It does have a special process, cow milk, buttermilk, cream, brewed coffee, apple cider vinegar, beer, breast milk. All of these things give your soap a really unique property, but they do need a bit of research before adding them to your soap batter. Today, we're going to be using distilled water. Like I said, you cannot use tap water. It will react because it has contaminants, good or bad, and can lead to unwanted reactions when making soap. Oh, excuse me. As you continue to learn and grow, you will be able to substitute liquids in lieu of water in your soap recipe. Continued with alternative liquids, there are 4 simple things that I want you to remember. Alternative liquids will result in a different reaction with your lye, your sodium hydroxide. So first, you need to do your research or ask a seasoned soap maker for help when in doubt. Number 2, you need to understand that lye and liquid react differently when using those liquids. So please don't be surprised if you add coffee to your sodium hydroxide, your lye, it will result in smelling very foul, like a brown, almost like a soup-like mixture. Of course, that won't stay in your final product, but because of them mixing together, at first it will smell like you did something wrong, but I assure you, you didn't. Number 3, please don't be surprised when your beer bubbles over your container that you're mixing your lye and your beer in because, oops, you forgot to cook down the carbonation in the beer. Yes, ask me how I know. Happened one time and I will never do that again. So like I said, there is a special process when using these liquids. So go ahead, when in doubt, ask a seasoned soap maker. Absolutely happy to answer your questions if you start to make soap. And number 4, using different ingredients is super, super fun. But I actually don't recommend you changing anything until you've had a few batches under your belt with some tried and true recipes. Today in your handout for simple soap making for beginners and your 3 basic recipes, these recipes are all I used when I was a baby soap maker. And so these are tried and true, but even though they're my recipes giving them to you, you need to run them through a lye calculator. Now the fun part, right? You've made the soap, you've put it into the mold, and now it's become firm enough for you to add all the fun botanicals and herbs and all the things, which is absolutely my favorite part of this whole process. It's ready to be, in the presentation, it's ready for you to use botanicals like dandelion, echinacea, clover, plantain, and today we're going to be using jewelweed to top our soaps. So they're an absolute fun addition to any kind of craft. These botanicals and herbs can be incorporated directly into your soap batter, like you see in this eucalyptus spearmint soap, and sprinkled on top or infused in oil before you make soap. All of which we do here on Little House on the Homestead. And so I can't wait to show you these fun soaps. So why should you use them? Why should you use botanicals and herbs in your in your soap? Why should you top them? And the answer is you don't have to. You don't have to use them, but they're a really great addition to this process. They have really a lot of loads of anti-inflammatory benefits. You can grow them organically at your home or your homestead. You can help treat problematic skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis. And while I can't claim that they'll help you, I've seen loads of success with my own family. They contain lots of skin loving antioxidants and healthy vitamins for the skin. They are pretty, the botanicals are pretty, the herbs are absolutely, a joy to use. But if they are not dry, they will mold on your new soap making creation that you worked so hard to master. So before you start adding them to any of your soaps, you need to let them fully dry. Previously, we talked about using essential oils in your soap. This is a screenshot that you'll see that will calculate the amount of essential oil or scent inside your recipe. So each and every recipe has a ratio of how much oil, how much of each oil you can use for your soap making recipe. So today we're going to be adding a special blend of lemongrass to our recipe. So I came here and I calculated the amount of oils that I would need, and I'm going to show you this in just a bit. This is just a screenshot, but I'll show you this in just a bit of how it works. You put in the amount of ounces, you tell it what exactly you'll be making. So as you can see here on the screen, we're going to be making cold process soap. It will give you any errors if you're thinking about a specific blend. But as a beginner, I would just stick to maybe one essential oil. You don't actually need to blend anything for a recipe. So I would start with maybe a lavender or a spearmint or something, a scent that you really enjoy. So now that you've got your soap in the mold, you've got your essential oils in the soap itself, you have allowed it to saponify enough to get firm. And now another fun part, you get to texture your soap. So between topping your soap with the botanicals, you are also able to texture the top. In the picture to the left, you see a soap that we have made. This was an orange clove soap. It has ground cloves on the top, but we used a technique with a spoon that allows us to pull up the soap batter to the middle of the center of the mold. Allowing it to sit long enough will help you to make the peaks that you see in this picture. And so you can either leave it smooth, like some of our old fashioned soaps, you can texture it, and you can also add the natural toppings on top. They can be added just effortlessly. So make sure again that your toppings and botanicals are dry before you're applying, and it is recommended to wait about 15 to 20 minutes until your soap is slightly firmed. You don't want to like walk away from your soap because, depending on, lots of things with your recipe, it may set in 10 minutes and it may set in 5 minutes and it may set in 15 to 20 minutes. So I just recommend don't walk away, or if you have to, come back every couple minutes to check to see if your soap is firm enough to make the textures and that you so want to see in your soap. You can use things like a fork, a spoon, a spatula. Just make sure, again, that they're stainless steel or silicone or what have you before you use them in your creations. Here is a supplier's guide. By now you're like, well, that's wonderful, Shelly, but like, where do I get everything? And so when I was a beginner, there were some really fun places that I went to, things like brambleberry.com. It's a soap making supplier for anywhere between beginners and advanced soap makers. Um, Soaper's Choice for wholesale oils for you to get. So this is a whole list. You can even get herbs, organic herbs at Mountain Rose Herbs. And so these are just a few places that you will go to get oils and things for your creations. However, it doesn't have to be super expensive. You can get many of these ingredients at your local convenience store. So please don't make it complicated. We're going to uncomplicate it today, and I'm going to show you exactly where you can get some of these. On the right side, you'll see you will need to run your recipe through a lye calculator, Brambleberry, thesage.com, and soapcalc.net. One of my favorites is our lye calculators, free lye calculators that you're able to use in your journey. Last but not least, if you've enjoyed part of this soap making experience thus far, and you really want to get some of these goodies for yourself, but you haven't made any soap yet, our skincare farm box launches here next week. Inside the box, you'll get handmade sourced items that align with the seasons, 5 to 7 handmade items that are artisan crafted, and self-care items. You'll get welcome gifts with your first box, and best practices for using and understanding what you're using in your skincare routine. This box is a quarterly box, and our artisan made soap and skincare items get shipped directly to you. You will receive a feedback form after this workshop, and with all the links pertinent to today's teaching. Just as a disclaimer, as I'm required, all the materials contained in this document and in this presentation are copyright protected by Little House on the Homestead, so please do not distribute this without written consent by me. Help us protect our content. I work really hard to teach other people, and so help us do just that. Like I said, it cannot be sold, it cannot be distributed. It is property of Little House on the Homestead. You can print this, it is beginner friendly, and it's for personal use only. It is not for resale. If you're wondering how exactly to get in contact with us, on the screen you'll see our social media platforms that we are a part of. You can email me at littlehouseonthehomesteadmn@gmail.com and shop with us at shoplittlehouseonthehomestead.com. So now that we have chatted about all things soap making, we are going to put this into practice and make a batch of soap together. I'm going to teach you how to do it, give you some helpful tips. And so let's get going. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and get set up for us to make together. Okay, so we are using this recipe. So if you want to reference this recipe, basic lard soap recipe, we're going to be using olive oil and coconut and lard and castor oil, lye, and distilled water in this recipe. Step 1 says we need to run our recipe through a lye calculator to ensure its accuracy and safety. I've already ran this through a lye calculator, but I want to show you exactly what that might look like for you. Oh, you know what? I do have to share my screen again. I apologize about that. One second. Whoa. Technology, sorry about this, friends. Okay, so here is my favorite lie calculator. It's called soapcalc.net. As you can see, it's pretty, it looks pretty overwhelming to the beginner. However, I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. Okay, so we are going to pick our oils and fats from the drop down right here. See, it says oils, fats, and waxes. It's in the center column there. You'll see all of the oils and waxes. And so we are going to pick olive oil pumice. So olive oil pumice is just that basic olive oil. 1 second. Oh, 1 second. We aren't seeing the right screen. Do you see the lie calculator on the screen right now? Can you message me in the chat? No boxes. How about that? Um, 1 second. Oh, technology, you guys. I'll tell you what. Okay. It's letting me know that you can see it now. Can you see it now? Yes. Okay, here we are. I am so sorry. Okay, so this is soapcalc.net. And as you can see, it seems overwhelming, and I guarantee you it doesn't need to be. You just need to plug in certain oils and fats in your recipe and total that amount to 100. So we are going to click olive oil pumice. If you can see right there in the drop down menu, we're going to push the plus. As you can see, there's a plus and a minus. So you're going to put plus there. One moment. Then we're going to go down to the next one and find coconut oil. So we're going to go to the coconut oil. We're going to pick 76 degree. Generally, the oil that you find at your local grocery store is 76 degrees. 76 degrees means that that's the point that it melts at. So we're going to pick that. Oops. And put that in the drop-down menu. We are going to then do lard. So lard, pig tallow, and put that in our recipe. As you can see off to the right side, you'll see a percentage. If you want to use a percentage of how much olive oil, what percent do you want to use? How much coconut oil, what percent do you want to use? And thereafter. So we are going to put in we are going to put in 30% of both olive oil and coconut oil. And we're going to put in, one second here. We're going to put 40 for our lard and tallow. This is not going to match your recipe on the card. This is not going to match your recipe on because I want to show you how to change it. And so this adds up to 100, 40, 30, and 30. That'll add up to 100. When we are all set with your numbers in here, you're going to go ahead and click calculate recipe. That will calculate how much of each of these items you are going to need for your soap recipe. So 0.3 of a pound, 0.3 of a pound, and 0.4 of a pound. You can go ahead and click view or print recipe, and you'll get a sheet that looks like this. So our lye concentration right here at the top, in the top section on the left, shows you you're going to need 27.419% of oil. You're going to need 2.63 to a ratio of 1. And that seems like, kind of like a jumbled mess. So you're going to go down to the center section, okay? And this is where you're going to measure out your oils. Below you see olive oil, pumice, coconut, and lard. You're going to put 4.8, you're going to measure out 4.8 ounces of that. You're going to measure out 4.8 ounces of coconut oil and 6.4 ounces of lard. And so that would be a total of 16 ounces for your mold. So that would be where you measure out your oils before you get started. And then right above that, you'll see the water. You'll see in blue, the blue line, water. You'll go over to ounces, and that is how much water you are going to be mixing with your lye. So 6.08 ounces, and then below it in the pink line, you're going to use 2.31 ounces of sodium hydroxide. And so that would be your water, and that would be your lye. And then below it in that kind of tannish orange color, that's how much oil you're going to melt down to then eventually mix with your lye and your liquid. So just to show you how easy it is to do this one more time. Let's say we want to add cocoa butter to our recipe. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the drop down. Depending on this is very easy to use, depending on what oils you have available to you, you can customize a recipe specifically to you. But as a beginner, I would just start simple and use oils that you find in an already pre-existing recipe. But if we wanted to add cocoa butter, let's say, maybe we would only do 30% of of lard and 10% of cocoa butter. You'd then have to recalculate your recipe, and it adds up to 100, as you can see in the total, and then view your recipe. So then you'd make 1 pound of this recipe, and now you've added cocoa butter. So your lye will change a bit, your water will change a bit, and then the amount of your oils will change just a bit. So as I said in the beginning, it is very, very specific. It is cool. Yes, it is. Because you can really customize a recipe depending on what you have available to you. Keep in mind that if you add too much of one oil or not enough of it, excuse me, one second, or not enough of another oil, it can either be too wet or too dry. And so do a little bit of research on the oil that you want to use, or ask a soap maker for some recommendations. So it is, yes, it is very fun. So you can, as you can see, you can customize it. And the cool thing about soapcalc.net is that it'll tell you here down in the bottom section. So this recipe right here, how hard your bar will be is about, it's very hard, right? The range of hardness goes over, or I mean, is right around 48, which is a really great hard bar of soap, right? The cleansing property falls right in the middle. The conditioning property falls right in the middle. It's a really bubbly soap. The creamy, how creamy it is also right there mid-range. And then the iodine within the oils themselves also falls right in the middle there. So this would be a really great recipe for you to use if you want to use farm rendered oils plus really rich butters and oils. It's really versatile. So I really like looking at what qualities of the bar of what qualities your bar soap will hold in your with your recipe itself. And so go ahead and look at these numbers. Generally speaking, you want them to be mid-range. Whoops, I am sorry. Generally, you want them to be mid-range. And so picking percentages that help them to fall in that range is very, very helpful. So I'm going to X out of this. So this is soapcalc.net. You will find it in all of your instruction sheets there for you to go ahead and use. We then are going to look at new directions aromatics. Picking a natural scent is very important, not only for to scent your soap, but it's really important to get quality tested oils that that A, are not going to break the bank, and B, that are really going to be, kind of like really great food grade organic oils. And so New Directions Aromatics is a US based company. Their quality standards are like top notch. I really love this company. So if you're looking for essential oils, this is the place to go. I'm going to show you how easy it is. You're just going to type in something like lavender. There's many to choose from. You can see their product ratings for people that have used them, but generally I go with ones that are certified. So like this one, it's not a blend of an essential oil. It is a pure essential oil, and it is verified by EcoCert. And so they've tested this oil. They've approved its safety, and I feel very safe to use this oil. So they have a list of all sorts of essential oils, depending on what scent that you really gravitate toward. Love this lavender essential oil. It's really crisp and fun. So here is a supplier that you can use if you so choose. Next up, I am going to show you where I get my soap making molds. This is Nurture Soap Company. It's a premium soap making supplier. They really have great soap molds, equipments. They also have soap making kits, bases, all of the things. But I love these. I first started out using a wood mold. It seemed a little bit cumbersome for me. And so I transitioned to using a silicone mold. And I'm going to be showing you that today, and that's what we're going to be making soap in. One second. I want to show you the one that I have. This is the one. Generally speaking, this is the size that I use. It's only like a 2.5 pound basic mold. It's really great. The liners are really thick. A lot better than you would find on Amazon. So it does seem like it's a bit expensive, 30 bucks for this mold. But if you invest in a good quality soap mold, you will not be disappointed. It gives you all the pertinent information about how much it'll make, etc. You can throw these right into the dishwasher. The mold itself has little holes in the bottom in case your soap gets stuck. And I will show you that in just a moment, but you can pop this right out of pop the silicone liner right out of the soap mold, and the holes help you to do that in case it gets stuck. So that is Nurture Soap, really great soap company. They have great customer service, and it's just a really great site to use. Last but not least, of course, if you are an Amazon shopper, which most people are, there are soap making molds online. You can get these ones that you see on the right side, but then you also need to get some sort of something to cut it. So generally speaking, I use soap molds like this one for beginners, because they're inexpensive. You get to really play around with how to make soap. It's pretty cost effective, and they are dishwasher safe. So as you can see in this picture, they like pop right out of the mold. And so that's why I really love silicone molds. Okay, I think that I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. So those are some of the basics. Do you guys have any questions before we get going on making soap? I know that was a lot of information, but I feel like you got to understand the basics before you get going, and then, you know, kind of have a real life application. And so I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, shoot them in the comments. So we're going to be, like I said, using this basic lard soap recipe. I love it. We have lard available to us by local farmers. And so that's what I use. And I love that I can source it locally and support other farmers. Do I have a favorite place to get palm oil? Here in Little House on the Homestead, we actually don't use palm oil, not because I don't think it's a great oil, but it really has been shown to lead to like a lot of deforestation. And so you can get palm oil, however, through Brambleberry. You can get it through Soaper's Choice. It's just not one that I tend to use. It does have, you know, similar qualities to, let's say, something like shea butter. And so if I had to recommend it, I would probably choose a different oil. The question was, do you have a favorite place to get palm oil? Lastly, before we get going, this is one of my silicone molds from brambleberry.com. It's really great. It's what we make our lotion bars in. You can also use it for soap making. And so I make round soaps just like this one in this same mold. They are super, super easy to pop out when they're done, especially if they've hardened. And so this is one, if you're looking for a mold, Brambleberry has some really awesome silicone molds. And so I would recommend this one. But you can get, like, you know, pretty much any silicone mold. They, for the most part, they're created equal, but it's just the thickness of the silicone that you use. And so Brambleberry and Nurture Soap have really thick silicone. And so you can use them again and again and again and not worry about them breaking down. All right, next up, we are going to get into the nitty gritty of cold process soap making. And so grab this guide, pull this guide up for yourself. This is a step-by-step guide. And so we're going to be going step by step through how to make soap. We are going to start on step one. We are going to suit ourselves up for safety. In the beginning, we talked about how safety for myself and for you is super important. You are going to absolutely need long sleeve shirt. You are going to need a pair of spill proof goggles, ones that really hug your face. I have both these for my workshops and things, and I use those for when I have my glasses underneath, or if I'm not using my glasses, I use a more slimmer eye protection like this one. This one's from Carhartt, but it has to really hug your face and hug your eyes. So you can't have any like gaps in the side, because if lye were to spill up through that, you can absolutely lose your vision. And so please, please, if you get anything from this, be very safe with this. So you're going to need long sleeve shirt, closed-toed shoes, eye protection, and some sort of nitrile gloves. Okay, so when you are mixing your your oils and your lye together, the lye is still very hot. So you wouldn't want to touch any sort of soap batter with your hands. You can absolutely burn yourself because it has not went through that chemical process just yet. You need something to protect your hands. So these are nitrile gloves. Get these at Costco, Amazon, where have you. I like that they're disposable, but I also have gloves like you find in your like kitchen section, where you would like for washing dishes and what have you. So you can also use those. They are absolutely safe to use. They're a little bit thicker in rubber, so sometimes people like those, and they really fit snug to your hands, which I really like too. But today I'm going to use these. So we're going to suit up for safety. You can see that I do have an apron on. I always use an apron because like I feel like it often gets messy when you're making, and so I just don't want it all over my clothes. It's hard to get out of your clothes, so wear some grungy clothes if you don't want to get them all dirty, or just invest in a good apron. You'll also see that I have a towel. I tied in the front, and then I put a towel here, so in case I get something on my hands, I'm able to wipe it off really quick and have kind of like a clean environment. And so first and foremost, suit up for safety, and then pre-measure your liquid lye solution and set aside. In the beginning of this guide, you'll see at the bottom it says room temperature method. Do any of you know what room temperature method means? Have you heard that in soap making? Let me know in the comments. I have not heard of that term. Okay, and you'll notice I like an interactive class. So if I ask you questions, please go ahead and respond to them in the comments. So a room temperature soap making. There's different kinds of soap making, but today we're going to be using room temperature soap making, and there's a few reasons for that. Room temperature soap making makes it easy. You don't have to measure the temperature of your oils and your lye. You just heat the oils, mix the lye, and let them sit. And you don't have to measure how hot they are. That's one method. So that's room temperature method. You basically let them come up to room temperature, and they're both the same temperature when you mix them together, right? However, some soap makers, I don't, I used to, but some soap makers will do a method that entails you to measure the oil temperature and measure the lye temperature. What I found is that you have to really sit and baby it. And if they're not within 10 degrees of each other, you cannot pour them together because they won't saponify, they won't mix together. And so that method I felt was very cumbersome. And for a lot of beginners, it's very overwhelming to get the same temperature within 10 degrees of each other so that you can actually pour them together. So a room temperature method is you can prep all of this, right? And you can like let it sit, come to room temperature, no stress. You'll know that they're already room temperature, and then you're able to safely mix them together. And so that's a method I've always, that I have adopted over the years. It is less cumbersome. It is perfect for beginners. And so that is what we're going to be doing today. So with that in mind, I have already melted my oils. You'll see that this is a pretty big batch. So I just upped the recipe so that I'm able to stock my shop with this recipe. So you'll see this. And so that's why you see that it's, it's a bigger amount. And so we're going to be doing the same thing, pouring it into our smaller mold so that you can get an idea of what it looks like to do just that. And so I've already let this and the sodium hydroxide come up to room temperature. So these are nice and, room temperature. They're not hot, they're not cold. And so this is ready to go. And so that is step one. So I have, it says pre-measure and mix your lye solution and set aside. So I did just that. Whenever you're working with your lye, you need to get on your safety equipment, right? And so when you start this process from start to finish, you'd keep these on. I'm sorry, but I didn't want them to fog up on me. So our lye solution, I'm going to go grab that. It's in my bathroom over here. I do that because it does get, when you mix the lye and the liquid together, it does cause a fume to a reaction to happen. And so the fan is generally on to take out the fume out of our home. And so if you could just give me just one moment, I'm going to grab that and then we're going to continue. So as you can see, I have mixed this in a Rubbermaid container. This is just an old container. It is the appropriate recycle number. And so I'm able to then, after it's cooled, to put, this cover on it so that the water inside this mixture does not evaporate. So this has already been cooled. It's already room temperature. And so this is ready. I do, however, want to show you what it will look like for you to source your sodium hydroxide. You will often find this. It's often called drain cleaner. Don't let that scare you. People use sodium hydroxide for many things. And so just because it's tagged drain cleaner, which it does clean your drains, right? Because it's tagged drain cleaner does not mean that it is inappropriate for soap making. It's actually wonderful. You can get this at the hardware store, any local Menards, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, and you often find it locally available to you, but it will just say household drain cleaner. It has to say 100% lye. It cannot be 80%. It has to be pure 100% lye. So when I mixed this, I measured the lye. One second. The question is, does sodium hydroxide expire for soap making? Yes, it does. You will know that it has expired or is starting to expire when you see, and so this is a perfect example. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there is, it's starting to clump up inside there. That means that some sort of air has gotten into the sodium hydroxide. And so this isn't bad. And it doesn't mean that this is fully expired, but you do see like there's a clump inside there, right? And so just a tiny little clump. And so you know that air has gotten into your lye. How you can tell if your sodium hydroxide is expired is that the crystals inside will be a grayish color. That means something other than air has gotten into your sodium hydroxide. Would I then use that to make soap? No, I wouldn't, because you cannot tell its potency if it will mix well with your oils. You don't know the content that made it turn that gray color. So I would take this to your local chemical recycling center if you notice that the crystals inside are gray, and I would not use that. Generally speaking, lye, the shelf life of lye is maybe 8 months to a year. After that, it's really kind of hit or miss. If you don't see any of those evident signs that your lye expires, I would say that it's still okay to use. If it's not like huge clumps in there, it's not gray, I would say that it's okay to use. So in the beginning, I hope that answers your question. So in the beginning, I talked about how you need to measure out your lye and your liquid. Your lye will be in one container. Your liquid with your 100% distilled water will be in another container. Once they're all pre-measured out, you're going to take your lye and you're going to pour it into your liquid. You do not do it the other way around. Very, very important that you don't do it the other way around. Putting the water into a bunch of sodium hydroxide will cause a terrible quick rise in temperature. It can overflow the container. It will give off the most horrid toxic fumes that should not be breathed in. So very important to remember, lye into liquid. So the smaller container into the bigger container, always. Very, very important rule to remember. So that's what you'll do. And that's what we did today to prep our oils or our sodium hydroxide for our room temperature method. We put our lye into our liquid, we set it aside into our bathroom that was vented outside, and we let it come to room temperature. So that's what we did with our lye. And I did have to do that prior to the class, so I'm not going to be showing you how that is, but does everyone on the call understand how you do that? Lye into liquid. Okay, good. Okay, so now we are heading on to step 2. Set out your soaping equipment, your spatulas. So we have a spatula, we have our immersion blender, we have our cups of colorant. I thought I would show you how to add colorant. If you so choose to add colorant, you'll notice that this is like an indigo color and a spinach powder. Both are naturally derived soap colorant. So we're going to be using this. So set out your soap colorant. We also have our essential oils. So I don't know if you could see this, but this is our lemongrass. We're going to be using a lemongrass essential oil today. You would set out your freezer paper. You can tell it's right there. But today we're not going to be using our freezer paper because we are going to be utilizing our Nurture Soap silicone molds. The mold itself will come like this. This is a 5-pound mold, and I'm gonna pour a big 5-pound mold today, but I'm also gonna show you how you put it in your little soap molds. So it comes with a a cardboard insert that helps the mold retain its shape. So we're going to be using this today. The silicone liner comes right out. Dishwasher safe. Super good quality silicone. You can tell that it's, you know, a quarter of an inch or more. It has those holes in it if your silicone gets stuck in there, and some of them do get just a bit stuck and you have to help them out of the mold. So these are very helpful. You just push your finger and then that pops like right out. So we're going to be using this today. But when I started, I just used this cute little, and I saved one. I had quite a few, but my husband made these for me. Just a simple box, put some screws in it, and then I would line this mold with that freezer paper that's up there. But I just found it was very cumbersome, and they didn't, the soap wasn't always the same size, and I was going for consistency. So you can use wood molds, absolutely. But today we are not going to be doing that. We are just going to be using our silicone. So step 2 says, so we got our mold, we got our essential oil, we got our soap making recipe, our basic lard soap making recipe. So I have this already pre-measured. I do want to talk quick about how in the soap making, you do have to have a very precise measurements. Because your, like we stated in the beginning, you have to have a specific amount of oil, a specific amount of essential oil, a specific amount of lye and liquid, right? It has to be precise. And so we have this scale. It's a really great scale. You can get it on Amazon. It is the KD 7000. I will show you here if I can. Pretty bright in my studio. Sorry about that. But you'll notice that you can do different modes. You can do it in grams or ounces, depending on what you prefer. You are going to, it'll go to the nearest ounce. So it's very, very precise in our measurements. And so you don't want to go like, oops, I went over 0.5 of an ounce. No, you really want to be specific. There is a little bit of wiggle room, but the more specific and precise you can be in soap making, the better success you are going to have for how your soap turns out. And you'll have absolute consistency in your making. So I love this scale. It has a tare function. So if you put your bowl on here and you put in cocoa butter, let's say, right? And then you're like, okay, I want to add the next thing. Then you'll tare it out, set it back to 0, and then add your olive oil, and then tare it out, add your castor oil, and continue to do that through each oil, so that you don't have to have several containers to clean up after you've done all the work to get ready. So of course, in this guide, like I said, this is not an all-exclusive list of what you might need. As you go along, you might find you like something that's not listed here, and that is absolutely 100% okay. Step 3, if you're using a wood soap mold, now is the time to line your soap mold. Like I said, if you are using a wood soap mold, how you line it is very important. Today, we're not going to discuss that. We're going to be using a silicone mold. And so I really like them because they're easy to unmold soap when you're just beginning. Step 4, now that you've already done your oil or already pre-measured your sodium hydroxide, it's already coming to room temperature, right? It's the thing that takes the longest to come to room temperature. So that's why we do it first. So you've already done that. You're going to measure out your oils, which we've already prepped. You're going to, pre-measure them. Make sure, like I said, as you add each oil, you're going to utilize that tare function on your scale. You're going to use heat safe containers. So this one has the recycle number 5 on it. This is perfect. This is just a basic old yogurt Yoplait container. Love using these. My family saves them for me for soap making and all the things. And so it's really great resource to use what you have. So we have our containers. So as you heat your oils, you can either do this over the stove or you can put them in the microwave. I often find that when you're making your soap, it's often easier to just put them in the microwave. You absolutely can do it on the stove, however, or a hot plate or what have you. But I have a commercial microwave down here in my studio. And so I just use that. And you would melt your oils and your butters and your farm rendered oils in there at 1 minute increments. At 1 minute, you're going to take it out, stir it around, distribute the heat evenly, and then you're going to put it back in there for a minute, 30 seconds to a minute, and continue to do that until all of those hard oils like cocoa butter, shea butter, farm rendered oils like lard and tallow, until all of them are melted and you can't see any more inside the oil itself. Both methods of heating your oils are perfectly fine on the stove. You have to use a stainless steel mixing pot. You cannot use anything other than stainless steel. So just be aware of that. Step number 5. Gather up your essential oils and your colorants. So you are going to measure out your essential oils, which we did here. We did right here at a medium scent level, as you will see on that on the lye calculator in the top right corner. It says how much of essential oil you can put in depending on how many ounces of soap you're making. So we've prepped our essential oils, we've prepped our colors, our natural colorants. Brambleberry does an amazing job at getting all natural colorants. So I use these in mine. This is purple Brazilian clay, rose clay. They have green clay. They have, and this is from a local farm, but this is spinach powder, but Brambleberry has like French green clay, and there's all sorts of natural colorants. So no need to put in any of those harsh chemically manufactured colors. Do your research before you're adding in a colorant. I know that all of these work. They're from a reputable soap making company. I've tried them all out, done them in test batches, so I know that they work. So rest assured that if you do order from Brambleberry, their quality is where it needs to be and safe for you to use in soap making. Step number 6, time to make soap, the funnest part, you guys. So our oils are at room temperature, our soap or our oils are at room temperature, our lye is at room temperature. And now we need to put in, sorry, just one second, getting set up here. We are going to put our oil into our bucket. Because this bucket doesn't fit in my microwave, I'm not able, I have to like transfer it for this size of a batch. You want to get as much of the oil out of the container as you can. Doing this will ensure that your recipe is accurate, right? If you left all of this inside and didn't put it in this bucket, you would be wasting and your recipe would be off because you know, like I said, it takes a certain amount of oil and a certain amount of liquid. So you want to get as much out of this container as you possibly can. Silicone spatula. I love these. They're really quite inexpensive. Got this one at Walmart. But the soap making suppliers list will give you places that you can get that you can get equipment just like this. This is just an everyday bucket. This is a Menards bucket. This is a 2.5 gallon bucket. I often use this because it is, it's bigger. It makes sure that the splash kind of stays in the bucket and it doesn't go everywhere. So we have our oil in here now. We are going to add in our sodium hydroxide. We're going to add this in. Before I do that though, I'm going to switch the camera over so you can see exactly what I'm doing. You can have a bird's eye view of what I'm doing so that you could, so that you can see exactly how I'm doing it. The question is, how long would you guess it takes for the lye mixture to get to room temperature with a small batch? Anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes. So this morning before this workshop, I prepped this about 10:30, and it was ready to go about 11:15. Is it okay for it to sit longer than that? Absolutely. As long as you have a cover on top. If you leave this open to air, right? If you leave it open to air, it will evaporate your water, leaving you to not have an appropriate recipe. So you'll leave the cover off while it's cooling. And then right away when it's room temperature, you'll put the cover on. So I put the cover on this after it got to room temperature, so that it didn't form a crust on the top. You can tell it's fluid. It doesn't have much sediment on top. And so you just want to make sure that you cover it so that the air doesn't react with the already mixed lye. Hope that answers your question. Does it? And then another question here. I'm sorry. So did you temp check for room temperature? Do you mean use the thermometer? No, I don't use the thermometer. If you can touch the container with your hand and it's not warm, it's ready. I don't use a thermometer to temp check any of my soaps. So if it is cool enough, if both of them are cool enough and about the same temperature, when I touch my hand to the container, they're ready. Lori, your question is, does it matter if your room temperature is a little cooler or a little warmer? Yes. So down here in my basement studio, it often gets a little bit cooler. So I have to turn on the heat. So it stays about 65, 68, sometimes 70 down here. But when you're mixing it, right, lye and liquid will get very hot very quickly, upwards of like 200 degrees or higher. Fear not though, 200 degrees will not affect this container. It will not melt this container because of the type of plastic it is. So down here, while it's cooling, I set it on the basement floor. Excuse me. I set it on the basement floor. It helps it to cool down and come to room temperature. But then when it's done cooling, I go ahead and I set it on my countertop so that the concrete doesn't make it even more cool. So you don't want it ice cold. If your lye gets ice cold, you're going to need to reheat it. I often don't recommend that as a beginner because it's a pretty finicky process, and it kind of starts the process all over again. So if you just put your lye container on your counter or wherever you're soap making, away from pets, away from kids, where it can be safe, where you can put a cover on it after it's done heating up, it should be just fine. Anywhere between 68 and 70 degrees, sometimes cooler. And it's okay, because if you have the two in the same area, they'll both be the same temperature, right? And that's the goal. You want them to be about the same temperature, about the same room temperature. So down here, like right now it's 68, 69 degrees. So these are both about that temperature. And I am not worried in the slightest that one is more cooler or one is hotter. Like, I'm not worried about that. They're both appropriate to room touch. They're not hot, they're not cold. And that's the beauty of room temperature method, that you do not have to measure like umpteen things, get them within 10 degrees of each other. Like, we're not doing that. It's very, very hard for beginners to get the optimal temperature, like with your temp gun. And you have to sit here and like baby it. And I just think it's a lot easier for just to prep them, let them come to room temperature, and then you're set to go. So I hope that answers your question. So now we are going to add in our lye into our oils. So I'm going to move the camera. I'm going to show you a bird's eye view of what exactly I'm doing. And I'm going to talk you through, how we do it, what techniques you're going to need to use for your stick blender. And then we're going to go from there. And it shouldn't take much time to get up to a trace. So a trace means when you've blended it enough that it becomes a little bit thicker and that you can pour it then into your mold. So here we go. So that's why this is here. I've been banging into it. All right. How's that? Does that look okay? So we are still on step 6 of our cold process step-by-step guide. So if you have that, we are on step 6. We are going to add in our sodium hydroxide, our lye. We're going to add this in, making sure that we're getting all of the liquid that we can out of this. By now you have your safety equipment on, you are ready to make soap. And so we're just going to mix this in. As a habit, I go ahead and give it a good stir. You'll see, I hope it doesn't autofocus, sorry about that. You'll see that it's already changing color. Do you see it changing? So we are going to add that in, grab our stick blender. This is just a normal stick blender you get off Amazon. They're like maybe less than $20. You are going to use this and you're going to put it down at an angle. Doing this will allow your blender to release the bubbles that come to the top so that you don't have little bubbles inside your soap. You're going to kind of like shake it just a bit so all the bubbles come out. And you're going to start blending. You're not going to want to blend continuously. You're going to want to pulse it and stir it. Pulse it and stir it. If you did a continuous blend, it would do something called a false trace. And so a false trace in soap making is it would get really hard, really fast, but then never saponify, never mix oils and liquid together. So you're going to continue to do that until you see it becoming until you can lift your blender and you can see streaks on the top. So this you can see, no streaks, right? It doesn't stay on the top. So we're gonna continue to blend, release the bubbles. Has anyone on the call today, have you ever made soap? Let me know in the comments. You have made soap. Lori says, I have made soap. What kind of soap did you make, Lori? Yes, but with lots of temp checks. Yes, you have. Oh, wonderful, Deanna. Yes, and there is no wrong way to do it. I would say everybody has a preference. And so this is just another avenue in which you can make soap, but without all the strict rules. So either way, if you'd like to temp check it, that's fine, but you have to remember it has to be within 10 degrees of each other. This method, Deanna says, this method seems much easier. It absolutely is. And if you want to get good at making cold process soap, use this method. Gain confidence in making, and then you're able to try like other methods. But yes, this is absolutely easier. I remember starting out, and I remember the soap maker that taught me saying like, you have to do it, you have to temp check it every, X amount of minutes, and like, kind of like almost like talking down to you. And I was like, well, wait a minute, like I've heard of all these other methods. Nope, this is the only method. Well, I'm here to like stop the, like the kind of scare tactics. Like you don't need to temp check it every, 2 minutes. Like you just don't need to. Lori says, I think that it's brilliant that you can do several batches at the same time. Absolutely. So, Lori, what I do is when I'm stocking up our inventory, I'll prep up a whole bunch of batches. My husband and I will prep up a whole bunch of batches. We will warm them all up, do all their oils, and then we will just make one batch and just continuing down the line. And it just makes it very, very simple. Deanna says, I just buy soap so I don't mess it up. Well, I mean, supporting other soap makers is fun too, right? Plus you get to get some of our creative yummies that we're making. But it is a kind of a cool hobby to have. So as you can see, it does take a bit of time. Whoa. What you just heard, it hit the bottom of the bucket and it made that noise. And that's okay. So we're just going to continue to mix this. Okay. So we're about ready to mix the other things. As you can, I wonder if you can see it. So if you lift the stick blender up and you see like a little trail of soap on the top, you're then ready to mix in your essential oils. Sorry about that. Forgot to, inside here I have a clay. A clay helps anchor the scent inside inside the soap. So we put kaolin clay inside of our essential oils. That's why it kind of like looks almost like muddy like, but it won't show in the soap. So we're going to go ahead and as you can see, here's the clay. We're going to put all of this clay inside of our batter. Keep in mind that any essential oil that you use can either speed up the process of its setting or slow it down. We're going to also add in our color to this. I'm going to put in 1 tablespoon per pound. This is spinach powder mixed with a bit of blue indigo. So it's going to make like a really fun greenish blue soap for our lemongrass soap. So we're going to add this in. Some people mix it with oil, in which you absolutely can do that. Others just put it directly into the batter, which is what I do. As you can see, it's already starting to get thick, so we got to hurry. We're going to mix it in as much as we can. And then we're going to see it. We're going to mix it in, and then we're going to make sure that the color is distributed evenly. So scrape the sides of your bucket. You can see there's a little bit of a blue hue still on the top, so we got to get it mixed in. Otherwise, you'll have those little specks all in your soap. So we're going to mix it up. As you can see how it's trailing on the soap or trailing in the bucket? That means like you're almost ready to pour it. You're going to release all the bubbles by shaking your blender. And get it just a bit thicker. We're going to get all of this off of our blender. All that soapy goodness off of our blender. Unhook it, right? The great thing about stick blenders is that they come apart and you can put them in the dishwasher. We are going to grab our mold. Take out our little insert. We're going to use this to insulate it. Let's see. That'll work. So we're going to pour this in close to the mold. You can see it's already getting thick. So you're going to do this with whatever mold you have. You're going to tap it. And I'm going to do this on the floor because the video is there. So we tapped it. right? And so all the air bubbles come up. So you don't want air bubbles in there. So you're going to tap it. And then we're going to use, so that's if you pour it into a larger mold. And this will be pouring into small silicone molds, which is what you would do as a beginner. Sometimes it's not like the messless, like it's, sometimes it gets messy because the cavities are small. So you're going to bang it down to set your soap in the mold. Remember that all of this that's left in the bucket is good. It's good soap, right? So you're going to want to take your bucket and get as much soap into your mold as you can. Any of this that's left in the bucket will turn into soap, but you've just spent time on quality oils and botanicals and all the things, right? And so let's not waste it. Put it in a mold. You can use other things like Pringles cans, or you know, you can use the recycled materials, PVC for molds. It is, you know, pretty endless on what kind of molds, but if I had to recommend any, I would recommend either getting some off Amazon or going to Nurture Soap and getting some high quality oils, so, or molds. So we have this here. You're gonna bang as much of it into your mold as you can. It's starting to get pretty thick. So we're gonna just, if we put too much in one, we're just gonna scrape it over. Sometimes it doesn't look pretty right away. So we're just gonna bang this down. Sometimes the tops of soap will get an ashy film. And so in your notes, it says that you're able to spray this with 90% isopropyl alcohol. That will eliminate it taking on an ashy texture with your soap. So how you know it's ready to do the topping is if you turn it on its side and it doesn't go anywhere. Like it is set there. You turn it on one side, you turn it on the other side, and it does not go absolutely anywhere. You're going to take your stainless steel spoon or whatever you're going to use. This is our lemongrass. This is a lemongrass recipe that we made today. And so I'm going to do simple swoop tops. So I'm just going to go from side to side as I go. Now make a fun like little topping. Looks all fancy. You can just swoop it up on one side or the other, or do something like this. It just really depends on what it is, what kind of aesthetic you really want your soap to have. So that is our soap. Now we're going to head to the topping. So today, I'm going to take my gloves off. You can either leave them on or take them off. Like I said, you're not going to touch the soap, right? It's already setting. I feel like I can get a better handle on my botanicals if I just take it off like this. If you do touch the soap, however, it can and will burn you. It is still saponifying, right? And so I'm just going to go above. I see that you have a question. When do you spray the soap with the alcohol? So you're going to put on your toppings. You're going to then gently spray the top of it. Do you have to do it with absolutely every soap? No. Just depending on your ingredients, some will cause like a kind of like an ashy, almost like a wood burning stove kind of ash on top. So if you want to prevent that, that is why I recommended doing the isopropyl alcohol spray on top if you do want to prevent that. And you can do that as like a preventative measure. So this is chickweed. This is going to go on the top of our soaps. Chickweed is just like a natural derived herb that you find like out in nature. So we're going to use this. It's really great for the skin, has really good antibacterial properties. I'm going to grab some candula. I'm going to grab some of this candula, put this in a plastic bag as I'm transferring all of my herbs to glass jars. But so this is our farm grown candula. We're going to put this on our soap. So we're going to use this chickweed first. And you're going to take this, pull out any like impurities, like I don't want this in my soap, right? And we're going to just do it lightly. And we're going to do this like, you know, several times because we want layers and we want dimension to our soap. So now I'm going to go in with our candula. And we're just going to do however much we think, you know, we think we want on there. I think it's so pretty. I think candula is so pretty. So I'm going to, you know, put a generous amount on there. And then to make sure that it doesn't look like layer upon layer, I'm going to go then back over with some of our chickweed just to give it just a bit more dimension. Keep in mind that when you cut these, when you cut them, some of the botanicals will fall off, and that's okay. So there she is. There is our soap. That's the soap that we made today. This is a lemongrass soap, super pretty, got an intricate top on the top. Some of our farm grown botanicals. And so you just have to use what is available to you. Get creative with it. Have fun. I think soap making should be like just absolutely a way that you can have fun. Thank you, ladies. Beautiful. I know something so simple as that can be so beautiful. We kind of, I just wanted to talk about this. Here on step 7, we added our colorants. It says make sure that they're well incorporated. As you saw, we want to make sure that there's no clumps in them. Add in your essential oils. Some people believe that they kind of diminish if you use the stick blender. I am not on that side. So just make sure that they're incorporated well. But mixing by hand will definitely slow down how thick it gets right away. Let's see. And as you saw, we poured slowly to make sure that the soap went into the mold appropriately, right? You didn't put a whole bunch of bubbles inside your soap. So we waited until it was, you know, pretty thick to pour it. And then step 10 is we waited just a bit. You can see that this soap, it did not take 10 to 15 minutes to get hard, right? So it was pretty quick, and lemongrass tends to speed up how quick it, fast it gets thick. And so it didn't take that long. So that's why you never want to walk away from it. Step 11, we talked about combating soda ash. So that was spraying 91% alcohol on top of it. Don't go crazy with it, just a light dusting. So I know that this one doesn't give me soda ash, so I'm not going to spray this. Okay. Last but not least, I want to show you what you do to make colors in your soaps pop. And it's something called insulation. So insulation is when you do just that. You take your soap mold and you take a towel, folding it in thirds or whatever, and you wrap this around your soap. Just like this. If your soap's not long enough, like that one's not long enough, I'll grab a little hand towel. I'm going to wrap it all around here. Just like that. Sometimes I even put clips on it, but this one I don't need to. You're going to put this, wrap it up with its towel to insulate it. Insulating it is going to do one of two things. It's going to help it cure faster, and it's going to help the colors to pop. This is going to go through what's called gel phase. Gel phase is when the soap becomes really, really hot and then it cools down. It helps the colors pop. It helps you unmold it faster and cure faster. So we're going to do this. You're going to take your cover that goes over that went inside your mold. You're going to set that on top so it doesn't crush the botanicals. And you're going to take one more towel and you're really going to insulate it. Like we are putting this little girl to bed. And I'm going to move the camera so that you can see me now. So we're going to insulate that, put that soap to bed. And it's going to stay in this mold for 24 hours. That's going to stay in this mold for 24 hours. There's a question. Okay. How do you insulate the individual cavity molds? Okay. So what you can do, which I'm not going to do with these, but what you can do is you will take a towel, like a thick towel. This isn't very thick, but maybe take a couple of these towels. I have a bunch of them, but you'll take this and you'll put your mold right on top of it. That'll like insulate the bottom of the soap. And so it will saponify from the bottom up. If you want, and which I've seen people do, is that you would take a few of these and do basically the same thing. So instead of putting like a huge towel on top, you would just put like a very light towel on top of your mold to insulate these. Does that make sense? So you just use the cardboard pieces that comes with the mold, or find a cardboard piece, make some wings on it so that if you have botanicals on top, it kind of sits like a little boat like this, and then put a light towel on top. They're going to get very hot. And so the more heat that you can keep in there, the better the color will be. So, maybe put 2-3 towels on top without squishing your mold down for these little individual cavities. But the thing that helps the individual molds go through gel phase and get really hot is putting that towel underneath. So you're insulating it from the bottom up. You're also going back over it on the top, and you're insulating the top of your mold. I'm not going to take my goggles off, and you shouldn't either. I know I took my gloves off, but I'm not touching any of the soap making equipment, right? And so we've insulated our soaps. Then after step number 13 is after you unmold your soaps in about 24 hours, you're going to unmold your soaps. They'll be ready to unmold, and you're going to cut them and you're going to cure them. They will still have active lye inside of their soap. So you're going to need to have gloves. You have to have gloves while you cut your soap. During that time, after you've cut them and you set them on a rack, stainless steel, or like a parchment paper, and put them in like a box or something with good airflow, the water inside the bars are going to evaporate and the soap is going to saponify. And so then you're ready to just set them aside now for anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks. And then step 14, y'all, you just made soap. Like, this is going to be such a fun soap for you to make. You've already like topped it with all your favorite toppings. You put in some really luxury oils. It's not a detergent bar. Like, this one's going to be nourishing for your skin, and you just made soap. I hope you enjoyed that process. And I'm so happy that you made soap the old-fashioned way. Final recommendation. I have a quote in the last part that says, remember, you are on your very own God-paved journey. Enjoy this. Enjoy the steps you take today. Whether that be soap making or just in general in life. I am so happy that you joined me today and made some old-fashioned soap. Got a cough here, sorry. Choking on myself. In case you forgot, and we were like knees deep in the process, for safety, always run your recipe through a lye calculator. Here's some of my favorites. There's also a fragrance calculator to tell you how much of a certain oil that you can use. Please do not hesitate to ask me any questions, whether it, even after this workshop is concluded. I am open book. I'm happy to help. And I just really think that all people should learn the skill of soap making, even if you don't use it on the daily, a great skill to have. So thank you so much for joining me. One last plug, our skincare farm box is headed to the shop next week, and it opens for new members. If you are a person that loves and values artisan skincare, I would love to have you inside of our group and just be able to send you a fun box. Keep in mind, there's going to be an email going out for you to give me feedback on this workshop. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would love to see in the future, if you have any soap recommendations, all the things. So keep an eye out for that. And I hope that you have a great day. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit over on time, but yeah, there's a lot to learn about soap making. So I hope you enjoyed this today. And thank you for joining me. So we will chat soon.